Welcome to the Content Marketing Channel. I'm Frank Felker.
And I'm Conrad Bosmans.
And we are here today to talk to you about another examination of another successful content marketing strategy, this time from a company called LeadPages. Content marketing is all the buzz and all the rage these days, but exactly what is it? How are we supposed to implement it? Conrad had the idea that he and I should do examinations, deep dives onto case studies of companies that are being very successful with content marketing. And today we're going to talk about LeadPages. Conrad, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you happen to come across this wonderful piece of content that you shared with me that ended up being the genesis of today's webinar.
Yeah, well, as we tell the story, Frank, it really builds the case for their model effectively. So I subscribed to the LeadPages ConversionCast podcast, and I was just listening to this week's podcast, or actually it was last week's podcast, and it was their 100th podcast. And the main podcaster, Tim at LeadPages, had the founder, Clay, of LeadPages. I don't remember Clay's last name, forgive me.
I think it's Collins. Clay Collins.
Mm-hmm. There you go. And they were talking about their the LeadPages growth hypothesis. And I think it's a case study that will resonate with every business owner out there, because they took content marketing and they really put it in the context of, hey, you're not investing in content, you're effectively unleashing a powerful sales force when you do it right.
I like that. Yeah, you're sending forth your sales minions to the world. So, well then, so Conrad shared this with me, and I listened through it, and it just set me on fire. I was so excited about not only what these people are doing, but how well their tracking of their results proves the power of content marketing. So we're going to get right into it here. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through a small number of slides here to talk about this idea. So let's get started now with this. Okay, so first off, I want to make a point. Well, let me talk a little bit first about who LeadPages is. And oh, I just started something there I didn't want to start. Give me 1 second. Okay, LeadPages is the subject of our webinar today. And what they are is what's called a software as a service, SaaS, sometimes referred to in shorthand as SaaS. So basically they're an online platform that allows you to create pages on your website or other places where people can fill out a form and, let's say, download your white paper or get access to an MP3 or a video, and then come through your sales funnel and become your customer. I don't really want to go into too much detail on what they do, because it's a little bit secondary to the point we're trying to make, and also it may well be confusing. But for people who had never heard of LeadPages, I wanted to just give you some idea who they are and what they do. So the first point I would like to make is something that unfortunately a lot of business owners seem to not understand, which is that customers cost money. You have to invest in marketing. If you don't invest in marketing, you're not truly an entrepreneur, because that's what entrepreneurs do. You invest in things like your hardware and software, or if you have a physical bricks and mortar business, your plant and equipment. You invest in things, the supplies and material that go into your cost of goods sold, or whatever it is you do. You have consumables, and you don't seem to have a problem spending money on that. And if you have employees, obviously you're investing on an ongoing basis in payroll and benefits. What so many business owners that I have worked with over the years don't understand, they seem to understand all of these things, and all of these things resonate with them as something that it makes sense to spend money on. But they don't understand that they also have to invest in customers. Customers cost money. So this entire conversation, I will have the link to the podcast, but you need to go into listening to this podcast with this frame of mind that investing in customer acquisition is an actual part of business. So if that's obvious to you, I apologize for the time I just spent on this, it's just been my experience. It's not obvious to a lot of business owners. So the next thing I would say is that there are a lot of marketing processes available out there to you. I have produced an online course that's called How to Build a Customer Factory. And in there, one of my 4 steps is pick your process. And you could have a process like you're a retailer or a wholesaler. You could have direct response marketing, which would be a company that sends out catalogs or direct mail pieces or does advertising on television with an 800 number where people respond directly to the marketing message and buy. You could have a direct sales team, a direct sales force. This also includes things like network marketing. But generally speaking, when we're talking about direct sales, we're talking about a sales team. And that's what a lot of these SaaS companies have that compete with LeadPages. They have salespeople. Again, SaaS is software as a service. They have salespeople on the phone. They have people out beating the street. They've got salespeople at trade shows. And they spend a lot of money on those salespeople. They spend a lot of money recruiting them, and they spend a lot of money compensating them. But another way that you might choose, which is what the whole content marketing channel is all about, is that content marketing is a marketing process that is now available to all of us today because of all the digital media platforms that we're all well aware of. So getting back to LeadPages, their hypothesis, their growth hypothesis, as Conrad talked about, was, can content marketing beat direct sales? And by that, I mean, or they meant, can content marketing generate more sales at a lower cost? So before we come back to some further slides, I want to come back to you, Mr. Bosmans, and say, before you saw this or heard this podcast, what would your answer to that question have been? Could content marketing outsell a professional sales team?
It would have been yes, but that's based on the statistical data that's out there already. You know, there's many studies that have compared content marketing's effectiveness versus traditional marketing methods. And you see statistics that it outperforms it by as much as 453%. So I would have said yes, but in this case, I would have been surprised really at the how effective their actual tests were and how just great their results were overall.
Well, and I guess that was asking you what you think about the effectiveness of content marketing was kind of a foolish question for me to pose. The point I guess I was driving at was that for most people and most business owners and most people who have been involved in marketing over the years, I think they would be hard pressed to believe that anything could be more effective in generating sales than a number of very seasoned and successful salespeople. But as you point out, the recent studies have shown, and certainly the whole point behind our webinar today, is that LeadPages has found that their thesis, their hypothesis, that they could beat their competitors' results with content marketing has proven to be true. And I want to come back to you about this. Now, here's another interesting point that came out of the podcast, was that the CEO, Clay, said that, you know, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't hire a team of salespeople because I didn't have the money. We were bootstrapping this deal.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things that did surprise me was when he was talking about the customer acquisition cost for the larger companies like the HubSpots and their break even, or the amount of time it takes them to break even. I was actually shocked by that they had a 2 to 2.5 year break even point on their customer acquisition costs, which was around $11,000.
Well, let's come back to that then. In fact, that's perfect timing. Thank you for the excellent segue, my dear Bosmans. Let's go back to the slides here for a second. Okay, just got to make sure I got it going. Okay, so that was their hypothesis, their scientific method, if you will. Can it beat direct sales? So I guess I'm going to need to come over here. Bear with me. Okay. Now, I don't want to go to, we were just talking about customer acquisition costs. And I think that's self-apparent what customer acquisition cost is. I just said a minute ago, customers cost money, and so how much do you spend? But let me just do some quick definitions of terms. CAC or CAC is customer acquisition cost. PBP or payback period means how after you've spent whatever you spent to buy a customer, how long does it take before they spend that much back with you? How long is the payback period? Lifetime value is how much money will the average customer spend with you over the entire time that they do business with you. This depends on a number of variables, including what your average invoice size is, what the average number of months or years it is that a customer stays with you, and what the average number of purchases are that a customer makes. Of course, a very successful marketer or marketeer would want to stretch that out as many months and years as possible, as many purchases as possible, and as high an average ticket as possible. And then finally, in terms of understanding whether you're getting a great return on investment for your investment in marketing, what is the ratio between lifetime value and cost or customer acquisition cost? And I'll show you what that means here in a minute. So again, customer acquisition cost is CAC, payback period, LTV is lifetime value, and then finally this ratio is critical. So just in round terms, you use slightly different numbers than what I used here, and I'd use these for ease of demonstration. But what they said in general in the podcast was that their competition is spending about $5,000 to acquire a customer. My God! You know, I hope they've got a very expensive proposition. Apparently they do. Apparently the cost of their service is about $5,000 a year, because the way it worked out was that the lifetime value was $10,000 because they said their payback period was 2 years. So I just put the $10,000 lifetime value in there I guess that doesn't actually work out exactly right. But they did say that the lifetime value to cost of acquisition was 2. So before we come back to speaking to this, I want to show what LeadPages numbers were. They were spending about $100 to acquire a customer. The lifetime value was $1,000. They immediately got their return on investment every time they signed up a new customer, which is something that will allow you to create an almost unlimited marketing budget if you can do that. And their lifetime value to cost of customer acquisition cost was 10. So again, I know we just went through a whole bunch of big numbers there. Why don't you give us your take on what all those acronyms and numbers mean for your average business owner who's watching us today, Conrad?
Well, I think the relevance, that there's a number of key things that are important when you're considering the digital marketing universe and the opportunities that today's business owners have. Because in the past, when we talk about traditional marketing methods, obviously you mentioned a few of them, whether it was direct response, whether it's advertising, magazine advertising, radio advertising, et cetera. Those types of channels and tactics, it was very difficult to measure your ROI. And because you weren't able to measure exactly, it was very difficult to measure exactly where those sales were coming from and where those leads were coming from. It was time consuming, and maybe the mechanisms quite often weren't there. So that was one of the problems. The only real measurable that most companies could point to and quantify was the cost of their sales force. So they said, look, if we're paying our sales force 25% commissions or whatever their budget is, they were able to calculate their CAC, or their customer acquisition cost. In this case, by comparing their cost to what that sales force is, I just think that it makes a clear case that making the investment into your content marketing is going to replace the brick and mortar sales force that you had before. And that's a metric that most business owners can relate to. They know how much salespeople cost. So I like that they created that analogy, because I think that's really the trade-off, and I think that's really what will drive people to make an A/B test. A being the sales force and B being content marketing. They made a pretty powerful case for B.
They did, and we will come back to their numbers and their strategy, what they've done in just a minute. You were talking about it's hard to tell what works with your advertising. Actually goes all the way back to the 19th century when retailer John Wanamaker said, "I only half of my advertising works. The problem is I don't know which half that is." And so here we are 100 plus years further into the future. And finally, we have an opportunity to do things that we know will work, and we can track and see exactly how well they work. Another thing is that, as you know, I've written quite a bit about sales as a profession. I've written a book called Recruiting Top Producing Salespeople that is targeted at business owners and sales managers. Getting top producing sales talent is tough. And when you do find them, and if they do produce for you, you're going to pay through the nose for those people. But as well you should, because as I say, sales is the world's most valuable profession. Why is it that successful salespeople can earn more than lawyers and doctors and even the owners of the company they work for? It's because of the tremendous amount of value that their efforts bring to the company, i.e. generating large amounts of sales. So if you can find an alternative to that hassle of recruiting and vetting and onboarding and motivating and compensating a sales team, God bless you. If there's an alternative available that's as effective or even more effective, I think it's absolutely worth people investigating it. And that's what we're here doing today.
Yeah, it's really proven to be exponentially more effective. And aside from the cost differential, there's also a practical differential in that with the sales force, they're doing one-to-one selling, but content marketing is one-to-many selling. And that's an easy metric to point to that business owners can relate to.
Okay, well, exponential difference and one-to-many, et cetera, that begs the question, if that's the case, Mr. Bosmans, why isn't everybody doing it?
Because it's difficult and time-consuming.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, because you're making it sound a little bit too easy there. That, here's the miracle that we all just need to do.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
And as I've told you before, I want simple and easy.
We all do, right?
All right, let's go back to this. Let's go back to the videotape. Okay, so this is where we left off. LeadPages at their various numbers. So what did they do? They layered their content on in stages. First, they brought on blogging, and that was something that they knew how to do, and is certainly the easiest thing to do. If you know how to use Microsoft Word, you can pretty much figure out how to become a blogger in about 30 minutes. And then next they went with creating a whole series of videos that they plugged into a YouTube channel. After that, they started the ConversionCast podcast. And then next they started generating webinars like you and I are doing right here. And then next they went on to online courses. So one of the points that Clay made in this podcast, Conrad, was that you need to start with one type of content and get it figured out and do a few other things that I'll let you speak to before you start layering on new levels. 1 second, let me get you back on the screen. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, there's a couple of other things that illustrate why most businesses struggle with this. As you look at those channels, as you look at podcasting, as you look at blogging, as you look at video, and you look at webinars, immediately a business owner or a C-level person is going to look at that and say, well, we need to become experts in all of those. And so immediately there's a sense of overwhelm. But the way Clay put it, I thought was brilliant. And that was, while he listed each of those channels, he did not list them in the context of them needing to learn how to do that. He listed them in the context of, we hired an expert in each of those. So we brought on not a salesperson, we brought on a blogger. Not a video person or not a salesperson. We brought on a YouTube video channel expert. We brought in a podcasting expert and a webinar expert. So I think the key takeaway there is that the business owners are going to have a better opportunity for success if they not only incorporate those, but incorporate those by bringing in an expert to manage them for you.
Yes, and he talked about how they invested one person at a time, and they invested well, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. But that his hypothesis was, could I bring together a team of 4 or 5 content experts in individual channels, and could they kick the butts of a high-priced team of salespeople? And again, we've shown that they have. And one of the things I didn't mention is that Clay pointed out that they reached number 220 on the Inc. magazine list of 500 fastest growing companies using this strategy. And they have not yet, they're just now beginning to bring in actual salespeople. And so that's an important point. So yes, he started out with one area of expertise, got it up and running, started to get a feel for what types of content were resonating with their target audience before they, and what questions their target audience needed answered before they brought on the next level or the next channel into the system.
Yeah, and to do a little deeper dive into that. So they brought in the experts, but you touched on it. They decided to master one first, and that was critical. Master one first before you move into other areas.
Absolutely. I would agree with that strategy completely. Okay, so they laid on these 4 different channels, and now here's some additional strategic points that they made. This is a very important point. Pay your content producers well. How many times have we heard somebody say, oh, we can just get an intern to do that, or we can find somebody in the third world to do that, or we can, it doesn't, this person, because they're only going to be typing, it doesn't matter that English is not their native tongue. And it turns out that that is an absolutely ludicrous basis to use. I mean, I recently ran into this myself, where a particular person I was talking to within a large organization told me that they'd gotten some pushback about having me and my company do content marketing for them for this very same reason. Oh, we could get an intern to do that. We don't need to spend that amount of money. How would you react to somebody saying that?
Well, clearly, this is your storefront, effectively. So your content is representing your company. And if you're hiring somebody that, would you hire a salesperson that is a high school student and you got them at the Starbucks? Probably not. Definitely not. So why would you do the same thing for your content marketing?
Yes, and I have a great company that I use called All Things Writing. Catherine Gotthard is a subcontractor and my content marketing manager for me here at Digital Media Positioning. And the tagline for her company is, because your writing speaks for you. And so if you have, a high school student who's leaving his part-time job to come work for you and do your writing, you may want to rethink that strategy.
Yeah, the barista to salesperson career path isn't the most effective.
All right, let's go back to the screen here. So another very important strategic point that they made is that not all of the content you produce is going to be as well received, equal one to the next. So it generally, he said in general terms, about 1 out of 10 that you produce is just going to be a grand slam home run that's going to be hugely and warmly embraced by your target audience. So when you find what that is when you spend some time and some money to promote that content. For example, you could be using that content as the landing page for ads that you pay to have appear on Facebook or elsewhere.
Yeah, and this is he used the term spreadsheeting. It's critical that you're able to measure, document your strategy and results. And that's one of the great things about the digital marketing is that you are able to document and measure exactly what's working, what isn't working when you're doing your content marketing in a more organic way. and identify the most valuable content before you spend $1 in advertising. And that's not something you could have done in the past.
No, good old John Wanamaker is probably spinning in his grave, wishing that he had these types of tools. And it's interesting, it occurs to me, in spite of not having these tools, Wanamaker built a fortune. And so he must have known a little bit of something about something. All right, let's go back to the slides here for another minute. Okay. Now, here's another thing that they talked about. No matter what you're doing, you should always be focused on lead generation. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're always in people's faces talking, you know, buy, 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 buy. But you always, on every page that somebody's consuming content from, there should be the opportunity for them to engage with you further by sharing their contact information and downloading a white paper or joining a special interest group or getting access to a video or what have you. This is the whole object of the exercise of doing all this content generation, is to get people to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm a qualified prospect. Here's my content information, contact information, along with the implicit permission to contact me on a going forward basis.
Yeah, and you don't always want to say buy from me. He used the ratio of 80-20, that 80% of your content should be valuable non-offer type of content, and then that 20%, he actually said it's between 5 and 20% should be actual offers. But that means that 80% or 90% of your content, it's not about making an offer. It's about getting your audience to know, like, and trust you. And you're also building a case typically for the solutions that you provide. So 90% should be giving your audience that valuable content, and then 10% should be offers. But to your point, that does not mean that every piece of content is not a potential lead generator. And what did they mean by that? Well, they may have a piece of content, and while they may not ask for or make an offer to actually purchase something, they do make it easy for you to opt in to their email list. So, and that's really the magic ingredient there, is the money is in the list, as they like to say. So don't think that it being a lead generating opportunity, it means that you're making offers. It simply means that after you've given them some value, that you can now make it easy for them to ask for more of that value by opting in. And that's obviously a very valuable source of business.
And that goes all the way back to the book. I can't remember if that was Malcolm Gladwell, but whoever it was who had permission-based marketing several years ago. This is the whole concept behind it.
And that was Seth Godin, I believe.
Seth Godin. I always get the two of them confused. You talked about always using your own technique to prove that it works, and he used, you said spreadsheeting, so that's spreadsheet as a verb, and then he also used a term that just cracked me up, which was dog food as a verb.
Yeah, we put the ing on there. Dog fooding.
Consistently dog fooding. Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's an old expression that you eat your own dog food, which means you're not selling something to people that you wouldn't use yourself. But the whole idea of dog fooding as a verb just kind of cracked me up. But we'll move on. Yes, you're not explicitly making a promotional offer to them. You're really giving them an opportunity to engage further with you if they so wish. This also comes back to Gary Vaynerchuk's, what is it? Jab, 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 right cross, where jab, jab, jab is the good, free, valuable content. And you always say, here's something free, here's something free, here's something free. But the jab, you let them know it's coming. You don't try to hide the promotional message as if it were another one of the valuable free messages. You always want to make it clear. And people accept that. They understand you're in business to make money, and in fact, you're offering them things that may well be of very great value and interest to them because of what list they chose to get involved with. And so it's important that even if it's only 1 out of, or 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 times that you make a promotional message or offer, don't try to hide it. Don't try to put the wolf in sheep's clothing. Make sure they understand this is a promotion, this is an ad, and people accept it. It's not like you can't sometimes be giving them lots of free stuff and then every so often give them an opportunity to buy. People accept that. Think about it. We all do ourselves. So,
that's another big reason why a lot of business owners struggle with this concept, is that they're really scared to give away their advice. That's how they get paid, and there's a phobia about it, and it's actually probably the most important thing you can do.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was just speaking about this to a new client last week and encouraging her to give away all of her best content. And I used the analogy of a movie trailer. We've all had the experience where we saw an ad or a trailer for a movie, and it looks like this has got to be the greatest movie ever. And then you go to watch the movie, and maybe the movie really wasn't that great, but all of the best parts of it were in the ad or were in the trailer. And so it was in fact a benefit to the movie producer to put all the best stuff in the free offering, because it got you to spend your money and come in and see the whole movie. I'm certainly not recommending that if your product is, not great, that you should go ahead and promote it. You definitely always want to focus on providing a top quality product or service. But the point is, it costs you nothing to put all of your best content into your free promotional information. And keep in mind, the vast majority of people, maybe 1 out of 100, will actually take your free content and do something with it. And that person would not have been a good prospect for you anyway. The other 99% are divided up among people who aren't going to do anything about anything no matter what, and a few other slices. But the main one you want to talk to are the people who absolutely think this is great, but they never have the time or inclination to do it themselves, and they want to hire a professional or purchase a professional product to get it done for them.
And there's another opportunity there, Frank, and that is, you don't always have to give away your content and your valuable ideas. If you simply share somebody else's idea, your audience is going to know, like, and trust you more because you brought them that valuable idea. And LeadPages does that quite frequently on their ConversionCast. Tim brings in people from other companies that have their own success stories, and he just lets them share their success story with his audience. Well, I'm a big fan of theirs because of the other content that he shared with us.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. Okay, so my last little line here is something you already spoke to, the 80-20 content to promotion ratio. So just to sum it all up, this is a summation that actually Clay made in the podcast itself, which is 2 steps. The first step is invest in content like you would in sales. And your thoughts on that step, Mr. Bosmans?
Once again, I'm a huge fan of that analogy because that's going to resonate with business owners. They've been spending that money already. They know what the cost of a salesperson is. So A, I agree with it, and B, it is going to give you the right mentality as you're fueling your sales moving forward.
Well, and I think also that we need to speak to the fact that many business owners are resistant to invest in content like sales, or for that matter, invest in content or sales, like I was speaking to at the beginning, that they seem to fail to understand that it's important to invest in marketing. But coming back to something we've touched on so many times throughout this presentation, the difference with the content is you'll know what's working and what isn't working. And for that matter, if it's not working at all, which is one of the #1 reasons why I have found over the years that business owners shun marketing, is because they don't want to spend money on something they don't understand, #1. But if they can't even tell whether it's working or not, or what to do to fix it if it's not, then it just seems like, what's the point of even getting started in this exercise? So content marketing, there are so many key performance indicators that you can follow that will tell you whether it's working or not. And so, in fact, I know KPIs are one of your favorite things, Mr. Bosmans. Why don't you point to a few of those that content marketing offers up?
Well, once again, that's another analogy that most businesses can relate to because they have key activities and key performance indicators for their sales force. So from a content marketing standpoint, you could take videos. If you have a YouTube channel, Google is going to rate your YouTube channel's authority based on a number of things. One is the number of videos that you've got. So you want to create a lot of content. Obviously, you want it to be good. So they look at the number of videos, they look at how many views that you have, they look at the length of engagement, and then they look at the amount of click-throughs. And those are all very measurable. They're all right there for you to see with Google Analytics. And those are the things that are going to lead to, A, measure how effective and the quality of your content, whether it's compelling and getting people to come back to your channel or not. But more importantly, it gives you a way to measure how to generate a substantial ROI.
Well, and that same type of tracking and KPI can apply to everything. How many downloads of your podcast, how many page views of your blog posting, how many shares of your Facebook posting, et cetera, et cetera. How many new registrations to your mail list based on the opportunities for people to register there. And of course, you can track it all the way down to actual sales, leads that were generated. It depends on what kind of business you're in, how much of a digital delivery of your product can be done. Is it a physical product? Is it a service that cannot be delivered except by one human being to another? All of these things can be tracked, and all of the ROI can be measured all the way down to the finest detail of which piece of content generated the most sales.
Yeah, and the beautiful part of that, Frank, is that there's a tipping point for businesses, because once they follow just one of those trails and they see that for every dollar spent on video marketing, or for every video they make and every share that happens, they're going to get a sale. And all of a sudden they said, well, I spent $1 and it generated $5 for me. Now they're not thinking about expenses. They're thinking about, I need to spend more money there. I need to invest more money there because that ROI is well worth it.
I'm taking a course right now, an online course on Udemy from Miguel Hernandez, and it's called How to Create an Awesome Online Business. And he shows everything, a complete look behind the kimono of what his numbers are. And a bottom line of it, he is not spending any money at all on advertising. Everything he's doing is content generation and marketing. And he's getting, the way he worked through the whole numbers, he's getting, I think, something like 300 visits a day to his main website. And he's generating a little bit more than $40,000 a month in sales. He creates explainer videos and promotional videos using animation. And the way it worked out is that on average, every visit to his website that's generated by content, because that's where it all comes from, is worth $3.45. I mean, that is real money, especially when you're talking about hundreds of people showing up every day. So he knows exactly how much value is being generated by his content marketing. Which brings us to our last point here, which is Clay's step 2, which is turn every piece of content into a lead generation opportunity. And we've talked about that before, why that's okay. But let's just wrap up by giving people a little bit clearer idea of what does that mean, turning every piece of content into a lead generation opportunity. What would that actually look like on their computer screen?
Well, you're really talking about creating the opportunity to engage. It's a lead, it's not a sale. So once again, if you look at a lot of clients that I meet with, if you look at their content, it's usually, whether it's email or whether it's a print ad, it's usually, as you alluded to earlier, buy. And they are not doing things that are going to engage their audience. So lead generation for our purposes is whenever you've got that out there, you want to get permission to give them more valuable information. So if you get a lead that says, I like what you've given me so far, I'd like some more, now you've got your sales funnel working and you're on your way. As
I was preparing for today's webinar, I went to their podcast website. And they're definitely doing a lot of dog fooding there, Conrad, where every one of the posts for every one of the podcasts gave you several opportunities. You know, would you like to download the MP3 for this? Would you like to see the transcription, the entire transcription for this? Would you like to be notified every time there's a new podcast that's generated? And of course, they're not, you know, grabbing you by the throat and shaking it out of you, but they're giving you every opportunity to engage with them. And the whole obvious reason why you would want to engage with them is because they're bringing you content that is of value to you. It's a whole thing. There's got to be value in the content for this whole concept to work.
Yeah, and that back to why do most business owners or why aren't they using content marketing? It's a long play, and it's difficult for a lot of business owners to realize that, hey, the seeds, you're planting some seeds, and they need to be watered, and they need to be fertilized, they need to be taken care of. And it's difficult for a lot of business owners to think that way. But clearly what LeadPages is doing by simply engaging with folks with valuable content, in the long run, they're converting a heck of a lot more people for a lot less money.
That's great. Well, in order to do a little dog fooding of our own here, Mr. Bosmans, I want to leave people with some information about how they could contact one or other of us to talk to them if they have some questions about their content marketing program. Conrad is on the West Coast in Laguna Beach, California. I'm on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. area. And you can reach us at contentmarketingchannel@gmail.com. I believe that's the correct email address, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Great. Contentmarketingchannel@gmail.com. And feel free to speak to both of us, one of us, the other one of us. We'll be happy to help you in any way that we can. So before we leave everybody today, any last pearl of wisdom dripping from the lips of Conrad Bosmans this afternoon?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that would you prefer a one-to-one sales approach or a one-to-many sales approach? And if you think one-to-many sounds better, it is. So content marketing is the way to do that.
And the thought I'd like to leave everybody with today is that unlike direct sales or advertising or almost any other marketing channel or process, content marketing gives you the opportunity to tell your story, to tell what's great about what you do for your clients, to talk about the problems that your target market has and how you're able to solve them creatively and quickly and inexpensively. There's just no other channel, marketing channel, or advertising medium that's been around since I've been around that allows you to tell your story on a personal basis to anybody in the world who might be interested. So with that thought, I am Frank Felker.
And I'm Conrad Bosmans.
And we go by the Content Bros. So if you'd like to hear more from the Content Bros, be sure to subscribe here to the Content Marketing Channel or email us at contentmarketingchannel@gmail.com. Everybody, thank you so much for your attention, and we will see you next time.